Welcome everyone to the May 27th workshop of the San Bernardino County Planning Commission, including those people that are here in the chambers with us and those people that are off-site at both the Jerry Lewis Desert Government Center and the John Burke Joshua Tree Government Center. In all places for housekeeping, you'll find copies of the meeting agenda and staff reports and the speaker slips outside the entrance or in a desk. We need you to fill those out and give them to whoever's in attendance here. It's Ms. Biggs, so that we can put you into the queue. When we know what the head count is in each of the remote locations, and we'll make a decision about where we go. We will probably rotate into one and then the other and then here, and not hopscotch around. But we want to give everybody an opportunity to be heard. Okay, Ms. Biggs, could I have you do a roll call? Let's make sure we have a quorum.
Sure. Chair Weldy?
Here.
Vice Chair Allard?
Here.
Commissioner Stoffel?
Here.
Commissioner Howie?
Present.
Commissioner Gongora?
Present.
Excellent. With quorum established, I've asked Commissioner Howie if he would be kind enough to provide the invocation for us today, and I've asked Commissioner Stoffel if he'll lead us in the pledge. So.
Well, thank you. And as we, as Memorial Day is just 4 days away, I thought it'd be appropriate today to talk for our invocation to kind of honor our veterans. Are we okay? Okay, good. And so after the Civil War, as people were decorating people's soldiers' graves, it became Decoration Day for the last 160 some years. And now it's known as Memorial Day, and that's in 4 days. And with that, let's start the invocation, please. Lord, help us to forever remember those guardians who stood in harm's way to protect our loved ones and us. Bless this and keep those guardians of liberty and their loved ones, just as they blessed us and ours, with their service in the name of freedom. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to come to the public hearing portion of this. We're going to start with a director's report and I think sort of expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everybody for the support in getting this workshop put together. I know there's been a lot of work that has gone into this, and special meeting accommodations with the commissioners, so much appreciated. Quick background from, we had previously brought a proposed ordinance to this commission. Lots of discussion, very, very helpful discussion took place, and the direction was to come back to do this workshop. We did quite a bit of outreach and really tried to make sure we got everybody included, give everybody an opportunity to submit comments, and to really help guide how this workshop will go. So for the kind of overview of how the workshop will go, we will have a staff presentation, kind of discussing some of the things that were brought up and concerns of the commission that was brought forth from the hearing. We do have a presentation from we have a presentation on the background from the folks from the Morongo Basin, and a light presentation, and then we will also have a presentation from the first district from that Newberry Springs area, and then we will open it up for public speakers, just like we would with a normal planning commission, and opportunity for the commission to ask questions, engage, a little bit different than our typical planning commission hearings. And we will have closing. At the end, we will be looking to have some discussion about the next steps and what to bring forward, and we will summarize what we hear as far as bringing it back before this commission for an actual action item. So the results of today's hearing would not result in any type of determination or action at this time.
Okay, so A couple things, timelines. Workshops are not as prescribed as specifically as planning commission meetings. So we've talked to the people that are involved and sort of made the following decisions. The presentation from staff will be whatever it is that you want. So you are unfettered. Then we're going to give the presentation to the 3rd District for 15 minutes, and then another 15 minutes for the lighting demonstration, so 30 minutes combined. And then Mr. Stempel will have 15 minutes, and then we will go to public hearing. I'll stop those periodically, and we'll do some questions as we go, because it is a little less formal setting. And then we'll work our way through that. At the end of that whole process, I have agreed to go back to the 3rd District for an opportunity to comment on things that they've heard, clarify the record, as if they were an applicant in this case, even though it is a county issue. And then I think it is our collective hope that we can work together to try to put together some thoughts or summation and direction as to where we're going. We're not going to be entertaining a motion at this point, but the same way that we ended up with the workshop as direction from the Planning Commission, if we can keep track of sort of overall thoughts and direction to help Magna, so that this comes back in a form that we could act on, or more comfortably act on. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give an opportunity for Planning Commissioner comments at this point, just as we would in a normal meeting as part of it. So Vice Chair Allard, anything to add before we get started?
Had to unmute, I'm sorry there. No, I don't, thank you. I'm very interested in the title, light trespassing, as opposed to heavy trespassing, but I'm sure that will be explained to me.
Very good. Commissioner Stoffel.
I'm good right now.
Excellent. Commissioner Huey.
No comments, right?
Very good. Commissioner Gongora.
No comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, dated March the 17th of 2020, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. We've made provisions for viewing live stream, and Planning Commission, in this particular case, you can comment to the Planning Commissioner through the email process that's outlined in the agenda, or we have remote opportunities. For those of you that haven't done so, that think you may want to address the Planning Commission, either from remote locations or here, now's a great time to get the speaker slip and fill it out and give it to attendants at the remotes or Ms. Biggs here. All right, with all of that, why don't we start out? This is a workshop on light trespass ordinance. Our staff today is Magna Gonzalez. So I think the floor is yours. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. As you previously stated, this workshop is intended to provide information and clarify some points of confusion for the proposed light trespass ordinance, which is intended to replace the current glare and outdoor lighting ordinance that we have on the Development Code. No decision will be made by the Planning Commission at this workshop. It's simply to give the public and the Planning Commission the opportunity to provide feedback on what we currently have drafted. And for the potential to refine the ordinance. We will schedule a public hearing in the future for the Planning Commission to provide final review and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So a little background on the ordinance. It was originally proposed by Andy Wingert, former code enforcement chief, in cooperation with a citizen group from the 3rd District, whose intent is to protect the dark skies. It was modeled after the city of Tucson and Malibu, and its emphasis is to prevent light trespass. We originally took it to the Planning Commission February 4th, where we received a lot of feedback from both public and the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission recommended that we host this workshop to give the public opportunity to voice their opinion. We also received questions from the Planning Commission that I would like to address at this time. One of them was, we were asked what other ordinances we consider to model a current ordinance. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm all. Thank you, Heidi. I apologize.
While we're at this pause, for the planning commissioners that are remote, because we shut you off when we do the PowerPoint presentation, if you want to break in, send me a text. I'll keep an eye on the phone, and then we'll stop and shift in. I just don't want to take their voice away, even though we've
Yeah.
taken their face away.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
One of the questions that we were asked was what other ordinances we considered to draft the current proposal. And there were several. Amongst them, as I previously mentioned, were the city of Tucson and Malibu. We were also asked how this ordinance compares to others within County of San Bernardino and the surrounding areas. And we prepared a comparison table, which includes the town of Apple Valley, 29 Palms, the city of Calimesa, and County of Riverside. And that's included in the memo that we provided as Exhibit A. We were also asked if there are any public safety implications and if law enforcement has expressed any concerns. We forwarded the proposed ordinance to law enforcement within the 1st District and the 3rd District, and they expressed no concerns. Some of the other concerns that we received were regarding the curfew, string lights, seasonal lighting, the motion sensors for security lighting, and elimination of non-conforming lighting, as well as enforcement. So we will go over those. Regarding the curfew, the proposed ordinance states that lights should be extinguished by 11 p.m. However, it does not apply to like close of business or when people are still in exterior areas. Of course, the light can still continue to be on if that is the case. And most importantly, it does not apply to building entrances, parking areas, driveways, or egress points, or where there is motion sensors. I think there was a bit of confusion before where people thought that all the lights were automatically going to be required to shut off, and that is not the case. Regarding the string lights, they are allowed, but they do have to meet certain criteria.
It's okay, she's got you. It's all right. You just keep presenting. We got this all handled.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the string lights must be LED lamps. They cannot exceed 3,000 Kelvin. The individual lamps should not exceed a maximum of 40 lumens. And then that cannot be part of the landscaping unless it's considered a seasonal lighting.
Hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm doing the same thing. String lights are not permitted for use as landscape lights except when used in permitted, so what does that mean? String light like colored
If it's
lights
Christmas,
like Christmas?
yeah, if it's Christmas and you're gonna put out string lights on your yard and stuff, then that would be an exemption. But if you just have them,
So I thought I knew what string lights were until you bring in Christmas lights and it's kind of like, wait. So if they're colored, they're Christmas. If they're white, they're string. If they
Is that like putting it over a bush? Like,
yes, landscaping, that type of aspect,
So
yeah.
it's not colored lights pointing at a tree. Like, palm trees have little lights that are shining up at them sometimes.
Are you gonna be putting them during a holiday season or?
So that's why.
No, just standard lighting. I'm doing my backyard. I'm putting accent lighting in, so I'm going to put a couple lights in the tree well, and I'm going to put a couple lights up in the tree as part of that. How does that?
Yeah, that wouldn't be allowed. It would be considered part of landscaping.
Okay.
Yeah.
That help-ish?
But if
think
you
the
have
other
any
thing is
suggestions, we
wrapping-
welcome.
How they wrap palm trees sometimes with string lights. Is that where this is coming from too?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's fine, yeah. We're here for feedback and suggestions, so yeah.
It was the mumbling, but really, this is a workshop, and so the format is a little bit different. I want to make sure that because your questions are probably everybody else's at the same
Yes.
time.
And if we need to expand on certain definitions or certain, yeah, we definitely appreciate your feedback. Okay, regarding seasonal lighting, it is approved and it is allowed for 60 consecutive days within a 12-month period. And it's typically associated with a holiday or a tradition. It goes back to the question we were previously discussing regarding the light. I guess it just depends on when you're using it and the colors.
You have 60 days. You got to pick your own holiday, though.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure Festivus is. Anyway, go ahead.
Can you go back a slide for me, please? It says individual lamps shall not exceed 40 lumens. Somebody who's not clear on what that is exactly, is that like the standard? Like you can go to Lowe's and Home Depot and there's a huge selection of stuff that doesn't exceed 40 lumens?
You would have to look for that specific, but it is available.
So it's not, so you have to actually like look hard for it, or?
No, typically they
So
come
it's-
out on the side. It tells you what.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I was just curious.
sidewalk covers.
I've never paid attention, that's why.
Okay, regarding the elimination of non-conforming lighting, the ordinance requires replacement or elimination of non-conforming lights within a 2-year period. The property owner can apply for a 1-year extension in order to transition to compliant lighting. They can even provide a partial compliant lighting plan if they're not able to fully comply within those 2 years and they need that additional year to fully comply with their lighting, they can do so as well. And any change of use of a property or new lighting will require it to be compliant with the ordinance prior to occupancy.
Wait a minute, I didn't understand that. Any change? Say that again?
If there was a change in use in a property, for example, let's say it was a salon and now it's going to be a convention center or something, yeah. So they would have to change their lights in order to comply with the ordinance.
So a non-conforming lighting scheme on an existing use, if there's a change in use, then they have to bring it into compliance?
Yes, but they also have to comply either way. They have 2 years to
2
comply.
years. Okay.
Correct.
And we're lumping commercial and residential all into the same bucket here.
We are, yes.
Okay, all right.
Regarding enforcement, any violations of the provision will be subject to Chapter 86.09, which is enforcement, and Chapter 11.02, which are violations and code enforcement. Code enforcement cases are typically initiated with a response to complaints, so that's how we would approach that. And we also have code staff available here for questions.
Good.
So the potential to comply with this requirement will either require for a property owner or tenant to replace the light fixture of a bulb, shielding to the light source, for them to redirect the lighting from outward to downward, for them to use dimmers to reduce the color temperature of that light fixture, for them to shield the light source, and all outdoor lighting shall be completely shielded, or they can also remove it or completely just turn it off. Now, this exhibit, we obtained it from the city of 29 Palms. They have it as part of their ordinance, and it gives an example of the unacceptable and acceptable light fixtures. As you can see, the unacceptable ones are pointing outward and are not shielded, and the ones that are acceptable are facing downward and are completely shielded. And this is the comparison table that we drafted, comparing the proposed ordinance to that of the town of Apple Valley, city of 29 Palms, city of Calumesia, and Riverside. And we specifically listed the curfew, string lights, seasonal lighting, motion sensors, non-conforming lighting, and enforcement, because those were the topics that were brought up last time that we met during the hearing. As you can see, not all the other ordinances address these concerns. For example, the town of Apple Valley, they're currently working on developing a code amendment to address their concerns from their citizens, which they expressed that they do want a dark sky ordinance.
I'm going to call them when I get home, and they're sleeping at the switch here.
Yeah, the last meeting, I think it was in August of last year, and they said
Okay.
that they needed to amend their code. So comparing our curfew to the city of 29 Palms and Calimesa, theirs calls for a 10 p.m. Shut-off time, while ours does an 11 p.m. The other two jurisdictions do not address that specifically. String lights, they are allowed in other jurisdictions, such as Calimesa, subject to specific provisions as our ordinance requires as well. Seasonal lighting, they're exempt or not mentioned for the town of Apple Valley and city of 29 Palms, but the county of Riverside does allow them as well, subject to compliance with all the requirements, yeah. Motion sensors are also allowed, subject to provisions such as ours, which ours requires them to be shut off 5 minutes after activation. And non-conforming lighting, it also requires for them to comply. We provide 2 years, while the city of 29 Palms requires a year for them to comply. They can file an extension if they're not able to comply with their ordinance within that time. The city of Calimesa deems their non-conforming light exempt from those requirements, but it does prohibit them from altering or repairing any of their lights to extend their useful life. And the county of Riverside requires compliance within a 3 to 6 month period.
So, a couple questions,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The proposed county of San Bernardino language is consistent with what the 3rd District Committee is looking for?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And when we can wait to go over, but I want to talk about enforcement. And this is, so we know that this is going to be driven based on complaints. All right? So,
Yes.
and this planning commission has dealt with neighbor feuds that had little to nothing to do with anything other than trying to get even with somebody else. So
Yeah.
we know that exists. So I live next door to Michael. He turns on these lights. I don't like them. I call code enforcement. They go out. He turns them off. How are we going to work our way around that so that it's consistent? That's not to you. That we're going to get to code enforcement. But as I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about whether it's commercial, that's a whole lot easier, I think, to get your arms around. Neighbor to neighbor, that's a little squishier. Now, if you're out in my neck of the woods where it's pretty rural and there's a lot of space, it's probably not quite as bad. So I want to make sure we don't do something that you can't enforce or that is easily abused. And yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. And the last section was enforcement. It will be subject to, they will have 2 years to comply. Anything else, if they don't file for an extension, then we receive a complaint. It will be handled by code enforcement either through notices, ordinances, or citations, and they'll be able to give more information on that process.
Okay.
And the other jurisdictions, some of them are pretty restrictive. Some of them require a 10-day compliance process. Some of them give them 90 days and subject to fees and up to criminal prosecution.
What are you in for? My bulb was too bright.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. Commissioner Gongora?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question on noticing. Is there going to be a notice sent to the commercial and residential businesses within the county, or what's the process going to be for notification?
To let them know that
You have 2 years, you have 6 months.
So you're talking about notification that there is a new ordinance.
Yeah.
Not notification of an enforcement action or,
Yes, notification of a new ordinance and then notification of an action, of course, are two separate things. But yeah, my question is about, you have 6 months or 2 years to get to this level.
Yeah, ideally we would do that. We also wanted to create possibly a graph like the one we obtained from the city of 29 Palms showing the
Oh, okay.
fixtures. Yeah, and we would also make use of our website. Everybody tends to read our website, so that would definitely be advertised on there as well.
Okay.
And since this isn't property owner specific, since it is this is a countywide, then our notifications when we adopt the ordinance goes through the newspapers as well as the other media formats that Magda mentioned.
okay, very good.
And that, oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
no, you're fine.
Commissioner Stoffel.
Fine, I'll come back to you.
And then when it comes to finding a 2-year, 3 to 6 month, or I'm seeing Calumet has 10 days, how was that, how do we arrive to that decision or that recommendation?
For the 2 years?
Yeah.
I honestly,
I think this was partly in conjunction with
Yeah.
kind of the groups that were involved with.
Like a consensus?
Yeah, I think that was, deemed to be reasonable and something that, everybody could kind of agree upon as far as, the reasonableness of when to come into play.
Okay, thank you.
Good?
Yeah, Commissioner Stoffel.
Mr. Stoffel?
I know I had a question on when you were talking about the enforcement. This is completely reactive, right? Nothing proactive?
Nobody's driving around.
That's correct.
Nobody from the county is going to be driving around going, I think that's over the top.
Okay. And then I just remembered my other question. Is this something that's going to be provided as documents for like short-term rental applications or that kind of stuff?
we could do that, yes. Give that information to our customers when they submit those applications, yeah.
Because, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm one of those like hamster minds where I have to forget it. So this will become part of our new permitting process, essentially, right? So when new buildings come in throughout the county, they will apply to this, or is it like an overlay?
It would apply to new buildings as well, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, Commissioner Huey, any questions at this point?
Most of my questions, thank you for answering my questions I had from the February 4th meeting. So I don't really have anything major other than a comment that apparently if you want to see a dark sky now, you're going to have to wait till the 11 o'clock news to go outside, which is pretty close to my bedtime, so I don't see it to be a real problem. But other than that, a good presentation. I don't have anything further.
Perfect, perfect. Commissioner Allard. Vice Chair Allard, sorry.
Question, is this, and you might have answered it, is this only applied to the residential portion of the development code, or does commercial, industrial, institutional, sewage treatment plants, airports, public right-of-ways, driving with your bright lights on, is it only residential, or is it all the other types of uses also?
It applies to all uses, but there are exemptions. For example, like airports, we do have those listed as well. We can, yeah.
I can see a problem with shielding those lights.
Right, yes, yes.
Okay, that's all I had for now. Anxious to hear comments.
All right, we'll pull back to you. While there is a tiny little break, have you gotten the collateral documents yet?
Yes.
Okay, so Tom says yes. Ray, you're good? All right, perfect. Then I don't have to worry about that. We're all good. Magna, do you have more?
No,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, you're off the hook at the moment, but you can't leave because we'll probably circle back.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Biggs, let's sort of check status. What do you have here in the chamber? Do you have any speakers here other than the two that I know of?
We
You have
don't,
speaker slips
no speaker slips
here.
here.
Remotely?
Remotely,
I'm looking for order of magnitude, not names yet. but-
sure. We have 6 speakers from Joshua Tree. I'm waiting to hear from the High Desert.
Okay.
I did receive notification from Chris. There is no speakers in the Hesperia Government Center at this time.
Oh, wow. All right, perfect.
I do have one emailed comment. I'm just waiting for clarification because their message got cut off.
Okay, don't let me forget. When we get to the speakers, we'll put that on top. I want to make sure that it gets on the record.
Okay.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition out of staff, and we're going to go to what would be the applicant portion of it. So we're going to invite the 3rd District up. If, Ms. Biggs, if you could keep an eye on, are you going to do the lighting demonstration at the same time, or you're going to do your 15 minutes, then Ted, then lighting? What do you want to do?
And a large majority of it, and then take a break and show some examples of lighting fixtures, and then return back to just a couple of more slides to wrap up our PowerPoint.
So I'll make you this deal. You got 30 minutes. Use it wisely, and then you can choreograph it however you please.
That'll be plenty of time. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Then we're going to ask you to come up, make introductions to your crew and who's here. There will be a little bit of separation between your collateral comment people and your presentation, but I'm not sure I can fix that. All right. Gentlemen, introduce yourself and where you're from, and then the time is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, commissioners and the staff of Land Use Services. You've been really terrific with helping us put this together, and this represents a tremendous amount of effort on everyone's part, and we're most appreciative of it. So thank you so very much. I'd like to start our PowerPoint now. There we go. Oh, pardon. Yes, my name is Steve Bard. Thank you. My name is Steve Bardwell. I am a member of the 3rd District Dark Sky Committee. I am also the president of the Morongo Basin Conservation Association, and I am a practicing architect. I practiced architecture here in this county for 45 years. So, and Luke?
Hi, my name is Luke Sabala. I'm a retired geophysicist, a physical scientist. I used to work for Joshua Tree National Park. I'm actually the one that brought the IDA designation to Joshua Tree National Park. But right now, I'm not speaking on behalf of the park, and this is not about the night sky.
Thanks so much, Luke. Yes, so this is, as I said, we're so glad to have this workshop here and so appreciative of the time to be able to do this. So here's a photo of San Bernardino as seen from up in the San Bernardino Mountains. We chose this photo because it illustrates the magnitude of the impact of exterior night lighting. And it gives a good sense of the scope of it and the scale of it. And it's also a good slide that it shows the portions of the city and the county that are well illuminated with lighting. And in the foreground, you can see those portions of the county that have a darker ambient light situation. This workshop is important for the purposes of bringing awareness to the issue of night lighting. And that is the most, one of the real benefits of this workshop is just being able to publicize the importance of this and getting the word out to people. It's also about education in terms of understanding what it means and how the various terminology that's used, it's a bit of a new lexicon that people need to become familiar with this. And it's also an attempt because with this education, the whole idea is how to create a well-conceived light trespass ordinance that will achieve the 3 main topics that we feel are most important here, which is energy, conservation of energy, safety and security. This ordinance will provide for a more safety and security within our communities, and health, the health benefits of having lighting controlled. So these are we're referred to as the Dark Sky Committee, but these three issues are the main issues that we feel are the real gist of what this ordinance will help achieve. So this committee was formed nearly 11 years ago under the then supervisor Neil Derry, subsequently picked up under Supervisor James Ramos, and now the torch is being carried by our current supervisor, Don Rao. And it's really been through their support that we've gotten to this point, as well as a tremendous amount of effort that's been expended by members of the community. This effort has also been supported by the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center in 29 Palms. They're very much in favor of it, as well as Joshua Tree National Park have been in support of it as well. It's important to say this now, that this is not a new ordinance. This is going to be an updated ordinance. This is this original ordinance under the same 83.07 code section was adopted in 2007. And I think it's important to keep in mind the changes that have happened since 2007. I remind everyone that it was in 2007 that the iPhone was first released. The whole question now of there's been a lot of changes since 2007. A lot of changes technologically and subsequently to the entire way of life. So this is really something I think to keep in mind. When the iPhone was released, there was really no concern about the possibility of there being damage to people's ability to sleep by having too much screen time, being exposed to blue lights. So this is something there's been a real change. Another stat which I think is important to keep in mind in thinking about our energy is in 2007, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere was 383 parts per million. Today, it's nearly 419 parts per million, nearly a 10% increase in CO2 gases within the atmosphere. So doing things to be able to address this growth of carbon dioxide is a component of the energy savings that we're looking to do. So the ordinance as proposed is going to be requiring the use of LED technology. Likewise, back in 2007, the use of LEDs was much more minimum. It was there, but it wasn't as it is now when you go into any Home Depot store or hardware store. The majority of the light bulbs in many of these stores will be LEDs, and it's getting more and more difficult to even find an incandescent bulb. Likewise, with LEDs, another advantage with them is you can control the light temperature. And during our lighting demonstration that we'll show shortly, we'll start to give you an indication of the difference in the color of the light that an LED can create, something which you could not do with other types of lighting sources. Included this slide to show the kind of information that one can expect to find when looking at a light fixture or a light bulb or a light source. Currently, in the current code, all of the measure of illumination is based on the equivalent wattage of an incandescent bulb. Well, no longer does that work. I mean, as I say, it's getting difficult to even find an incandescent bulb these days. So it made me think of, as an architect, people talk about blueprints. Well, blueprints were something back in the early 1900s, which was the way that things were copied, and you had a blue background with white lines. It's called a blueprint, but it's no longer used that way. So the idea of calling things, expressing things in terms of wattage is, in terms of relating to an incandescent light, is something it's going to go by the wayside. And now things need to be thought wattage for the equivalent amount of illumination between an LED versus an incandescent light is significantly different. So you get much more illumination or lumens. This is something that you'll see on a package here. It gives you a sense of how many lumens are produced by a particular light source. Also within LEDs, something that you did not have with incandescent lights, is now you can select an LED that has a different color temperatures. Anywhere from a very warm tone light down in the red spectrum, which would be in the neighborhood of 2,000, things are measured in terms of degrees Kelvin, which is a measure of the color temperature of a light. So the warmer tones down closer to 2,000, 2,200 degree Kelvin is a very warm tone. Then you get up into the blue tones, 5,000, 6,000 degree Kelvin, which is a very, very intense light. And this is the wavelength of light that can start to become very problematic in terms of health issues, which we'll talk about in a bit. So this information is readily available on packaging. So when one is going to look at a package, this is for a particular light fixture. You'll note this light fixture has the IDA symbol on it, International Dark Sky Association, which gives their certification that this is a shielded light fixture, meaning that the light does not extend upwards, it extends below a horizontal plane, thereby controlling where the light is happening. Just some more information here. This is a typical layout from that you'll find. This one we got in our local Home Depot, and this is something one going in and this does exactly what we're talking about. I was talking about. You can see the warmer tones up to the bluer tones, and if you want to get an actual physical sense of it, there's a display in many of these stores where you can push a button and it'll show you what the different type and color of light looks like. Yes.
Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with this. This light fixture that you're talking about that is IDA approved, is there a replaceable LED in it, or this is a fixture with the LED in it, and when the LED burns out in 1,000 hours, then you throw the whole thing away?
No, you buy a new bulb.
Okay, so there's a bulb or fixture or plug-in or something in addition to that.
Yeah, you would buy a bulb for this. It looks exactly like it would look exactly like an incandescent light.
right.
It screws in exactly the same way. There's absolutely no difference. No difference in the fixture itself and how it holds the light source.
And sunlight is where on that?
Sunlight is going to be in the neighborhood of 5,000 degree Kelvin, I think. Is
Actually
that
higher.
even higher?
Yeah, even higher.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah, but it's worthwhile, your question about if you can replace the bulb. Some fixtures will have a set LED driver, they call it, within there, which cannot be replaced. But many of them can. Many light fixtures use a conventional base, so you can just screw in an LED bulb.
Okay, very
So
good.
there's
Thank you.
no big change on that. Yes, one can get a pretty good sense of this, and there are a lot of options now in terms of, as I said, going out and taking a look at things. So you can see for yourself, because it's very important to, when just conceptually thinking about it, it helps a lot to actually see it in person. This is a slide which we put together. This was extracted from the International Dark Sky Association website, which starts to show the kind of degree of order of magnitude of the amount of energy that is by utilizing unshielded light, meaning light that is going up into the sky, up above this horizontal plane. The amount of energy that tends to represent in terms of dollars, and So when looking at this, now, this slide, I checked with the IDA just yesterday, and this slide needs to be updated at this point. It was last done in I think 2015. And since then, there has been quite a change, and people are moving towards LED lighting. It is not nearly the unusual situation that you would have found 20 years ago. Now you see people are going, and consequently, less energy is being spent to power per watt for, or per lumen, I should say, for exterior lighting. Less energy is being done. But at the same time, there's a trend to have more exterior lighting. So it's more efficient, but people are using more exterior lighting. So what it amounts to, there's approximately 640,000 households in San Bernardino County. So, I mean, looking at the amount of money that would be saved per year, you're in the millions of dollars within San Bernardino County. It's not insignificant. And with the benefits that this will provide towards addressing climate change and our damage to the planet that we all live on, I think is worth thinking about. I've took this shot just to show when people go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a store, you'll be exposed to a multitude of different types of light fixtures. Most of these light fixtures, as you can see on there, if you look on the top left corner of this fixture, you can see that most of them are unshielded fixtures. You can see the source of the light source directly through there. While there might be a lid that prohibits some of the light from going straight up, much of the light is going out horizontally as well. If you look down at the bottom right portion of that images, you can see shielded light fixtures where you cannot see the light source, and the light is being directed downward, which is, this will provide, as you'll see, we'll show in a minute here, a much safer and more security on this. Yeah, good. Go ahead, Luke.
Just a final thought on energy conservation. At nighttime, the primary source of electrical power is fossil fuel. Gas-fired combined cycle plants produce the energy. The demand has to meet the production. Now, there's not a guy at Edison that's flipping a switch and he sees more demand and turns the power up. That happens automatically. The grid adjusts. But predominantly at nighttime, fossil fuel is what provides electricity. Hoover Dam doesn't provide enough power to meet the needs of California because it's got to share its power with Arizona and Nevada. There's no more nuclear power plants. The sun is not there, so there's no solar. We're a long ways away from battery, utility scale battery backup, very long ways away from this. By adopting this shielded light ordinance, people can use a reduced wattage to get the same effect, and if they use LED, they're going to reduce their power consumption at night, which is fossil fuel based. If this ordinance is adopted, you, the county, would be at the forefront of energy conservation and greenhouse gas reductions. As soon as California Energy Commission gets on board with this, they're going to require all counties and incorporated cities to do this. I mean, it's the only way that they're going to be able to meet their renewable energy portfolio standard. That's the only way. And remember, fossil fuel at nighttime, that's what gives you the electrical energy, and this would help reduce greenhouse gases. You're right on the verge of being at the forefront of energy conservation. Did you have a comment or? Okay. Every single one of us has experienced like trespass.
One second.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were waiting toward the end for comments, but it's okay if we.
If it's germane to where he's at and you'll forget, then let's do it now.
Sure.
What other jurisdictions have adopted something similar and seen reductions in greenhouse gas emissions?
I'm sorry. Well, I couldn't quite.
Are there I'm sorry, is there any other jurisdictions that have adopted something similar and seen or realized greenhouse gas emissions?
Not to my knowledge. There are other areas that have adopted light ordinances. There are other municipalities that have adopted light ordinances that require the shielding and reduce wattage bulbs. We're kind of too new into this to really see what the greenhouse gas reductions are going to be. But believe me, it'll be significant in the future if everybody gets on board.
You got it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, anything else?
Keep going.
Okay, so how are we doing on time, by the way? I just want to make sure that we're okay on time. So everybody has experienced light trespass.
1 second, I'm curious also. Where are we on time?
We're at
Looks to me like you're okay. Keep going.
So ignorance is bliss, I guess, in this case. Okay, everybody has experienced light trespass, nuisance lighting, and extreme glare when they drive at night. The light from oncoming vehicles trespasses right through your windshield, right into your eyes, and it creates nuisance light. It's actually a hazard, and forbid if they forget to turn down their high beams. You're forced to look over to the right side of the road at the fog line, and just so you can see the road. This is a prime example of light trespass. People in this county use lighting that's brighter than that, especially if it's high-pressure sodium, mercury vapor, or metal halide, to light their properties. And it's unshielded, and that's a prime example of light trespass. So anyway, we can talk a little bit more about the safety here. So your eye mimics the aperture of a camera lens. In low light situations, you have your pupil dilates and you can only see in a low light situation. You don't even have fine detail in a low light situation. You can see, but you don't see and pick out the fine detail. As soon as your eyes encounter a bright light source, they constrict, the pupils constrict. Now all you see is the bright light source. You have no low light detail anymore once you encounter a bright light source. This is an example of light trespass, how your eyes would act if you encounter bright light trespass. Your eye during the day operates somewhere around in the middle because there's so much ambient light that there's absolutely no shadows. Well, there are shadows, but there's so much reflection of light off the ground and the road that you can see around both shadowy and bright areas. But at nighttime, you're limited. You've either got one or the other. You're going to see in the bright areas or you're going to see in the dark areas, but you can't see both. This creates a situation that we refer to as hard shadows. And in this picture depicts what those hard shadows are. You have the bright light that is shining up there, and in those areas, they're bound by shadows, and you do not have the visual acuity to see in both areas. You cannot see in that dark area. You can't see if somebody's lurking around in that area. And this is what happens when you encounter unshielded lights. Now, I'm gonna hit the next slide here. Somehow, I have to figure out how to press play on this. Does anybody have a suggestion? Can you hit, there's the play button at the bottom. There you go, right there. Thank you so much.
Gotcha! Hi, I'm the Dark Ranger. Did you see me hiding there? Probably not, because this is a bad design for lighting. What we have here are hard shadows. They're created by the fact that this light post was placed right in the middle of two trees. Now, it's not a very good situation for safety because the bad guys know the human eye can't penetrate the hard shadows. So that's where you hide and set up an ambush. And of course, the best thing is the psychology. Next to a light, people think they're safe, so they're gonna have their guard down. It's a dangerous situation.
Okay, so that's a prime example of hard shadows. And somebody made the comment and they said, well, there's no trees out in the desert. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. In the high desert, there's a lot of trees, but it's not just trees that create these hard shadows. Buildings, fences, anything that blocks the light of unshielded light will create a hard shadow, and you are not going to be able to see in the areas of the dark shadows.
Furthermore, in the desert, there may not be trees like that, but this ordinance applies to the entire county, and there are places in the county that would be just exactly like that.
So anyway, this is just a depiction of some hard shadows. If that guy in the that's standing at the entrance was standing just a foot back, you probably wouldn't be able to see him at all. And then there's an example of shielding. I mean, it's a pretty dramatic effect. I mean, you're really removing that hard shadow, and now you can actually see beyond that fence line. So here's unshielded, and then there's shielded. Now, if my son would have left his skateboard just beyond that guy where he was standing at, I'd be taking a trip to the ER because you can't see it. Your eyes would adjust to the bright light, and you wouldn't have the visual acuity to see into the dark shadow area. So I'm sure almost everybody has seen that show Cops, where the camera guy's following around the police officers. Often at night when they're pursuing a suspect, that suspect will always find the darkest place to go and hide and try and conceal himself. And at nighttime, if a deputy or a law enforcement official is required to come onto your property to look for an intruder on your property, and you have one of those bright sodium lights or metal halide lights that's shining, that's unshielded, his lights, the deputy's light, his eyes are gonna be affected by that light. His pupils are gonna constrict. He's gonna lose that low light acuity, and it reduces also the effects of his flashlight when he's trying to pursue a suspect in low light. Shielding would prevent that. Okay, Steve, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay.
And during the course of our preparing this presentation, I reached out to the Morongo Basin Sheriff's Substation. I said, what do you think about this thing? And I received the following, and which I would expect to hear. Unfortunately, I am not permitted to officially express an opinion either way. However, from a public safety standpoint, we understand the arguments. Our stance from the sheriff's perspective has always been, we feel a well-conceived light trespass ordinance can preserve the grandeur of our night sky while protecting our public safety interests, which I think is pretty compelling. So the other, talk about safety, energy, safety, security, and health. And it's important here to keep in mind this first, I'll actually read this. Many species, including humans, need darkness to survive and thrive, from the American Medical Association. So these days we're no longer a farming society where people are up at dawn and in bed at dusk. We're much more of a 24-hour lifestyle. And we have, the human species, Homo sapiens, has evolved from darkness. So we need the rhythms of the natural light-dark cycle, day-night cycle, to be able to prosper and thrive. The American Medical Association as well has identified there are correlations between exposure to harmful lights. This would be lights up in once again, the higher energy spectrum, 5,000, 6,000 degree Kelvin, which is a very blue tinge light. So in looking, so we've got there's an association. Now, we're not saying that it causes it, but there is an association. Many studies have found an association with this. Obesity, problems with obesity, depression, sleep disorders, diabetes, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, as well as cardiovascular disease. So it is a point of serious concern. There have been studies in Spain of workers that work swing shifts to see some correlation between the increase in breast cancer and prostate cancer, and they have found a correlation within that. Harvard University has also done studies on that, as well as the University of Toronto. And the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health has determined and made a statement that disruption to the circadian rhythm it's a problem. It's something that really needs to be thought about. So with health and with the artificial light, at night is when one produces melatonin. And melatonin helps to control our circadian rhythm of light and dark. With a disruption in the production of melatonin, this can disturb our circadian rhythm, and the problems with that can include inducing. Melatonin is used to induce sleep. It boosts the immune system, lowers cholesterol, and enhances the function of those glands that I have mentioned here on the slide. So these issues are not something to be discontinued or discounted, I should say. Here is a slide that we got from talking about other cities in terms of Commissioner, about the effects that in savings you might have had in greenhouse gas. Well, this is something that the city of Tucson has done some quantification of this, finding that they are saving in the neighborhood of $2.2 million in annual energy savings, and we know where that energy comes from at night. Coal fire in that part of the world, quite possibly coal-fired plants was the source of that. It also, the use of LED lighting will extend the service life of many light fixtures, because LED light bulbs can last far, far longer than an incandescent light bulb.
Approximately 10 years.
Yeah, approximately, yeah. So, and at the same time, while saving all this energy, you're having a major reduction in the amount of lumens, the amount of energy that's being expended going up into the sky. Now it goes down onto the ground where it's needed, and we're using less power in order to create that. So it's a good deal. And then during the course of this, we've been looking at trying to look and keep track of other municipalities and jurisdictions that also have a light ordinance. As we've talked about, Tucson and Malibu, Borrego Springs down in Imperial County, or San Diego County, I guess it is. They've recently adopted a night sky lighting ordinance. Julian, just very recently, just within the last couple of weeks, was designated a dark sky community, so they're very concerned about it. Flagstaff, Arizona, with their with the observatory that's quite close to them, has also been very much involved in that. And just yesterday, I discovered Brewster County in West Texas, which is the county in which the McDowell Observatory is located. They just passed a outdoor lighting ordinance. So there's definitely some history of that sort of thing.
And it might be worth mentioning that they actually have a different metric when it comes to light trespass. In Brewster County, Texas, they consider, if you can see the arc tube, the filament, or the LED light source, they consider that to be light trespass.
And this is something that might be worth looking at, because in terms of, they rely more on instead of relying on a measurement of light that falls over a property line, they say if you can see the light source from an adjoining property, then it is light trespass, which is not to say that you can't see the illumination caused by the light on an adjoining property. But if you can't see the actual source of the light, then that would be a shielded light, and light trespass is not occurring. So it's something to definitely to think about on that. Now,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, these
Yeah.
are some of the extra benefits.
yeah, so here we go. These are a listing of some of the additional benefits, as it says here, that we're talking about. And I think the first one on the list here, I think is important to think about. This is a reduction in conflict within neighborhoods. If we're talking about neighbors getting upset with each other for this, if you can, so often the source between neighbors, or often the source of conflict between neighbors can be, that bright light that's shining in my window all night.
If I can just
Yeah.
interject something really quick here. I know there was considerable talk about how this was going to impact enforcement. If this ordinance is adopted requiring shielded lights, it becomes self-enforcing. You eliminate the light trespass. It's not going to be a big code enforcement issue if this is adopted. If you raise my taxes, I'm going to pay my taxes. If my income tax goes up, I can complain all I want, but the bottom line is I have to comply with the new law, or the law requiring shielding. So it's not an enforcement nightmare because it becomes self-enforcing.
And a secondary benefit from this, and we see this out where in the Morongo Basin, is there is a real advantage to the tourism income that's generated by protecting our dark night skies. So while we aren't leading with the idea of this being, and we're not promoting this as being a dark sky ordinance, this is an ordinance to save energy, provide safety and security, and for health. And a byproduct of this would be, we're going to get more tourists coming out to enjoy the night skies. So it's kind of a win-win situation. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center has been in favor of this. They've been participating in our meetings for quite some time, and they are very much in favor of this controlling light for meeting their mission out there, because they need to have a dark sky. Of course, the damage to ecosystems, it's not only human health that is affected by inappropriate and blue lighting, it also affects ecosystems. I'm sure many of you have seen stories about turtle hatchlings that are on the coast in the Caribbean. They, right after they're hatched, they don't know what's happening. They start walking towards the bright light, whereas at which point many of them can be killed. So that's something to be aware of.
All right, shall we get our demonstration
Yeah.
going here?
And lastly, it's really important to mention here, is that the dark night sky we need to show respect for our Native American spiritual relationship to the night sky. This is a very important thing for many of the Native American tribes out within the Mojave Desert. Yeah, now let's see if we can't, if we can
Plug that in.
dim the lights and if we can
I'm gonna
close the lights down here, would be great.
So I don't want to blind you guys here, so I'm going to try and point this down
Why don't you start with the shield?
with the shielded. Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
I was going to do this just the
I know,
opposite. I was
just
going to
a-
blind them first and then start them with the shield, then turn on the shield.
We sneak away.
All right, this is an example of what is being asked of to be accepted by the Planning Commission. This is an example of a shielded light. It's got the wrong color temperature on right now. I think if I turn it off and turn it back on, I get the right color temperature. So this is actually the color temperature. And if you look around, you can see pretty well in all of these areas. It's not casting those really, really super hard shadows. It provides plenty of ample light and you're not blinded by the actual filament or the arc tube or LED. Prime example of what most people are using is this. And this does create hard shadows. Sorry, I'm going to point it down here so I'm
Why don't
not
you shine it
blinding
up
you.
into the cameras
All right.
up behind, yeah, so
There you
people
go.
can
That's
really
one
see.
thing I didn't do. Okay,
Yeah.
shine it up into the cameras there.
Yeah. yeah.
Anyway, this is a prime example of what most people are using today. Okay, do you want to grab the string lights really quick? And
Yeah,
just demonstrate
yeah,
what
let's,
string lights
Why don't you
look
turn
like?
that shielded light on? We can keep, if we can keep the overall lights down for a second, just to kind of get a sense here. Can we? There we go, good. Thank you. And
Okay.
so here is an example of, just to start to give a sense of what the level of illumination, I hope this will start to go through. But here, Luke, why don't you grab one of these? Here we go, Magda, why don't you grab one here? So these are they're also called fairy lights. And they work out to about 10 lumens per individual LED. There are 20 LEDs per string. So all told, the cumulative effect of all these lights is about 800 lumens if you put them all together. Because 20 times 10, you got 200 per string, times 4, you got 800, about the same equivalent amount of light output as a conventional 60-watt bulb.
And staying under the 4,000 cumulative total wattage, you could add a whole lot more of these.
So you
if-
could
if
have-
you desire for ambient lighting.
Yeah, you could have a large number of them.
Okay.
Let's see if I can now, we brought along one other one we thought would be helpful to
What is the
show.
total?
This one, this total string is about,
Would you like a little light there, Steve?
oh, thank you, look at that.
Wrong one.
That's the kind of light.
There you go.
Wonderful. So here we go. So Magda, if you'll take some as well, and just
What's the
sort of-
total output of this?
The total output on this thing, let's just sort of string it out here. It's kind of going, this is 3,700 lumens.
So still allowable,
Yes, so this is
still within limits. I mean, that would provide plenty of ambient lighting, and in the immediate area, it's enough to provide safety. Now, granted, they're unshielded, but that's still going to be allowable as long as when the area is no longer occupied, you turn them off.
Yeah, and keeping in mind as well that if one does want to protect your night vision, placing string lights behind a fascia or behind a beam, you can still get the effect of the lights without having the disruption of the total night vision. That's great.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Okay, now we can.
Now we can finish it.
Yeah, this is good. Thanks so much, Magda. Yeah, here we go. You see what happens?
So all of those were allowable under this ordinance?
Yes,
Okay,
that
Thank
would
you.
all be allowed.
Except for
The floodlight.
floodlights that were blinding you.
yeah.
Except for those. So yeah, all of those are allowed.
Are you close? We're
We are close. I just
Okay.
would like to go through and let me go on to these last couple of. So in closing, this is not a new ordinance. We're going to be modernizing the existing ordinance. The updated ordinance will reduce energy costs and lower greenhouse gas emissions. It will enhance the safety and security of county residents and visitors. And a new light ordinance will contribute to the health and well-being of our residents.
Steve, can I ask a quick question? On the string lights, when you purchase them, are there lumen ratings so that people can know, just like with other light bulbs?
Yes, there are. And many light fixtures now, I won't say all of them, but the majority of them have those specs on the packaging. So it will tell you how many lumens are involved in there, what sort of wattage, what sort of color. You want to make sure you're looking for the 3,000 degree Kelvin. And yes, you can. That information is readily available.
On the packaging,
On
is
the
it on
package.
the string lights themselves? Is there any?
It's the packaging for the string lights. On the fixtures themselves, it's not. You generally wouldn't expect to find that.
One
Yeah.
final thought. I'm just wanted to just kind of reiterate that we're not asking people to turn off their lights. And there are certain areas that are exceptions around doors and around parking areas. We're not asking them to turn off, we're asking them to shield the lights. That's what this new ordinance or updated ordinance, it keeps saying new. It's not new. You already have a light trespass ordinance, but this additional requirement for shielding would help eliminate that light trespass issue and enhance safety. And so we're not, it's real important to just drive that point home. We're asking for shielding is what would make this, would bring this ordinance up to date.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And
Very good. Hang on just a minute. Let's see what we got. Let's go through questions. Commissioner Stoffel?
On the staff presentation, can you pull up the section that had the landscape lights? My question was, we talked about the lighting around like palm trees, but it would seem that if you use the lights that you guys pulled out, the little string lights, and put those around a palm tree, it would be fine, right?
I was just going to say, I was
You
going
can
to,
have them, but you would have to turn them off after no one's out there.
Right.
Yeah, you can still have them, but just make sure you turn them off.
Okay.
exactly what I was going to say.
Is that
Because that's
what you're looking for?
not what it says, right? It says they're not permitted.
string lights are not permitted.
For use as landscape, except,
They're not permitted to be used as landscape lighting. And wrapping them around a palm tree, I believe to me, it sounds like,
That would classify as landscaping, but if you were to put it over your patio, I guess we would have to define specifically what we would consider landscaping and what we would consider like your outdoor dining area.
It's a little bit difficult to say if you hang it from an eave, it's okay, and if you wrap it around a tree, it's not okay because it's the exact same thing.
right?
So maybe a little more definition in it.
Yeah.
But the way that I'm reading this is if you're using it in a landscape, or you could use it 60 days and call it holiday and wrap it wherever you want. And I'm a little concerned about some of the fine details, but we'll get there. Okay. Anything else?
Can I address the group? That's a good point about the landscape lights and wrapping them around a palm tree. That's the whole point of this workshop, is to figure out some common ground. And if we have to say that we're going to acquiesce on the landscape lighting, as long as you turn them off when you're no longer using them. I mean, are you going to light your palm tree all night long? Was that your intent? Didn't you say you were going to have lights shining up to the palm tree? Are you going to have them on all night long?
I think there is some architectural lights are also part of security. And some of them, I mean, I'm thinking about this palm tree wrapped light. What comes to my mind is the Mission Inn, you know? And so that's holiday lighting generally, except a lot of it survives past that. I was there the other day, and so there's lights wrapped on trees and so on, and it's part of that atmosphere that they choose. I don't think they turn it off at 11 o'clock, and I don't think there's ever a time that there aren't people wandering around somewhere there. So
Since that's a commercial use, it might be viewed differently. So that might require different, at least from us, different permitting and different reviews if it's a commercial use.
And I think the exercise of listening to your argument and then trying to apply it to places we're not quite sure about, that's exactly what this workshop is designed to do,
Yes.
is to give us an opportunity. Go ahead.
I think also that if you're saying, there's a difference between saying this is a permitted type of light that could be used for landscaping, and this is how you could do it, as opposed to saying no. You know, I think that's, to me, it's better to say, hey, sure, you can do that. And these are the suggested types of ways to do that to still have us, you know, as opposed to saying not permitted. That's my thought.
I agree. I mean, that's precisely why we're here at this workshop. I think the shielding is kind of the quintessential element of this this ordinance, and the string lighting and the landscape lighting and stuff, as long as we can have them extinguish them by a certain time, and maybe there is a different ordinance for commercial buildings that use them for ambiance. That's the point of being here.
And how many lumens of string lighting are
Good.
permitted? You know, for instance, in this West Texas ordinance that just passed, they've chose 6,000 lumens as the cap
This threshold.
for string lighting. However, they limited the color temperature on their lights, also has to be LED, but it'd be 2,700 degree Kelvin, a warmer tone. And as a point of information, the IDA is now recommending that LEDs be limited to 2,200 degree Kelvin. So the lower the temperature you go, the easier it is on your eyes while still providing the same amount of illumination.
Ambient light. Very good. Commissioner Gagora.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the light illustrations.
Heidi,
I
we-
did
Madam
read
Commissioners.
I saw that the Julian was highlighted as a dark sky community. And I noticed that one of the benefits that was mentioned in the presentation was that Joshua Tree would also follow that lead, or what would that process be to get to that level?
We have already done that. I started doing this in 2006 with a lighting inventory of everything that we had in the park, and then a funding request, and then all our non-compliant light fixtures were removed and replaced with light compliant, or with the night sky compliant light fixtures, and including the benefit of using LED lights to reduce energy consumption.
So from my understanding, Joshua Tree overlaps with Riverside County too. So is that something that you just took and just implemented in both counties sections?
It's park-wide. We implemented this lighting program park-wide, regardless of what county it is. It applies to the park. It doesn't apply necessarily to which county you're in. It's ubiquitous throughout the park.
Okay.
And
And from my understanding in this ordinance, its intention is to have the reduction after 11 p.m. Is that accurate?
if the area is no longer occupied, like if you're entertaining in your patio, and yes, you would extinguish the lights after 11 p.m. or when people are no longer present. Again, there are certain exceptions, like around doorways and entryways for security. Those lights would probably never be extinguished even after 11. We'd like to see you go onto a motion sensor at that point in time. But again, part of this workshop is to figure out a common ground for everybody so it's acceptable. Shielding is key. That's a key point to energy conservation, greenhouse gas, and safety.
So with the shielding, would that be permissible with what you're recommending, or is shielding only going to be what's required after 2 years? I'm trying to figure out what that is. So, for instance, I'm in my backyard with my family. We're there till 1 a.m. We use the string lights. We use the other lights that you presented. Is that does it? How do you collectively understand whether it's at the 4,000 lumens or things of the sorts? I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to.
So the lumens are printed on the package when you purchase the string lighting. If you're out in your backyard until 1 o'clock and you're enjoying your string lights, well, continue to enjoy them until 2 if that is what you desire.
Yeah.
As long as you're out there, you need to have lights, and you need to have them for safety and security. Now, the other lights fixtures that you may have in your back might not be compliant, which means they might not be shielded. If you put shielding around them, if you put a shielded fixture up there, you'll find you'll actually enhance your safety and security and tripping hazards, and you can reduce the wattage and have energy savings as well. But there are exceptions.
That answered my question.
There are exceptions to some lights can remain on because they're adjacent a door or a parking area or something.
And it's also important to note that the ordinance as proposed, the curfew in the mountain and desert regions is 11 o'clock. Okay. There is not a curfew in the valley region.
Thank you.
All right, so let's, you're good?
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to the other commissioners. Vice Chair Allard.
Hey, thank you very much. Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Some noise pollution here. Very good presentation. You've motivated me to take down my Christmas lights tonight. Early in the presentation, I think we were confusing shielding with energy conservation. If you take a 60-watt incandescent light bulb and just shield it to the ground, it doesn't automatically start using less energy, correct?
That's correct. But the point
don't-
is with shielding, you will direct usable light down. So you'll be able to use a lower number of lumens to provide the same level of illumination on the ground. If you have an unshielded 60-watt bulb, just half of that light is going up in the air. If you have a shielded fixture, it will put that light down on the ground where it is needed.
Okay, so if you're using a 60 to get, you may be able to drop to a 25 or something. And if you go to the newer LED bulbs, then you really start cutting the power use down.
That's correct. That's correct. And one of
Okay,
the,
so shielding alone doesn't do it. Shielding in conjunction with a different type of fixture or a smaller wattage is what, as you save money.
that is correct. Shielding alone does not do it, but what shielding does do is it eliminates the light trespass. And your ordinance already on the books is about light trespass. That's what it's about, is light trespass. The shielding would eliminate the light trespass by using a lower wattage bulb. All the light that normally would be cast upward in the air is cast downward, and you can effectively use a reduced wattage bulb to achieve the same or better desired effect.
My last comment was, and thanks for the presentation. I noticed when I'm driving down a street with the new modern street lights that are directed down with the LEDs, you seem to have a street light, a bunch of dark, and then another street light, which is fine. I just like maybe law enforcement or public works or something to weigh in throughout the course of, not today, but in general, as to what type of light cone we're trying to throw off for public safety. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howie.
Yeah, again, thanks for all the information. I think the shielding aspect is great. Although, I live in the valley, so it'd be a little bit different because I was trying to figure out if you had palm trees and you had, everyone wants to illuminate a ground light up to show the palm tree at night. So I guess in those areas that this would be restricted after 11 p.m., you'd have to turn those off from that standpoint. But no, I think most of my questions have been answered from this presentations.
All right.
If I could,
Perfect. Thank you.
one comment about using uplight onto palm trees. If the source of the light is above eye level, it would not necessarily be creating that hard shadow effect. If the source of the light was down at ground level, shining up onto the palm tree, then you're starting to have the glare problems that would start to affect your public safety.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We're going to shift at this point. Mr. Stemfel, we're going to have you come up.
I hope I'll be given a little leniency on time-wise on this, but I'll try to stay within my time limit here.
So do we have a PowerPoint?
Yes,
We've
we need
decided-
to switch to the presentation, yes.
All right, hang on. The public testimony? Yeah. Yes, we haven't taken any public testimony. We'll go out to that after this. But I want to get the presentations out of the way first. Okay. All right, sir, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ted Stemfel. I wish to thank the chair and the committee members, commission here, for having this workshop. This glare and outdoor lighting ordinance is being promoted by the Dark Night Sky Initiative. The movement is to reduce artificial light spread so as to reduce sky glow and to darken the sky for stargazing. Some light spread, however, is necessary in rural areas. There's quite a bit of difference here talking between shielded lights between the urban area and your very rural communities, where we need security lighting that's necessary around homes to enhance the safety and also in business districts. I am representing the Newberry Springs Community Alliance, a small social network of residents in Newberry Springs. Like many rural residents, we love our independence, and we do not like unreasonable governmental intrusion. That is what this unnecessary ordinance revision represents to us: bad government. Some residents have asked me if they should attend and speak at this workshop. I have advised them not to. This workshop is about presenting facts, and that I can do here for them. It is not about ganging up on one another with numerous speakers. Dark night skies are romantic. I love them. I am mesmerized by the heavens. But to try to reverse mankind's progress to maintain them is silly. I cannot stop, or you, and no one can stop mankind's technical advances. This unnecessary ordinance carries a price tag that most county residents do not want. The price is too high. The price is the loss of home security and the safety of their families. The proponents of this ordinance claim that cutting lights will enhance tourism, especially camping tourists. I do not believe that this is significant. I have camped extensively throughout California and Arizona. Dark night skies are nice, but dark skies has never been a factor in planning camping trips. The pleasure is in the experience of camping, be it in fog, in rain, or clear nights. So the claim that dark night skies will make a meaningful difference in tourism is silly. The reduction in lighting will actually hurt tourism. Most tourists want to visit sites where they can feel comfortable. They want well-lighted areas. The proponents of the ordinance, however, are only catering to a small special interest group and not to the vast majority of county residents or tourists. Most business people want to light their businesses at night to warmly welcome and draw tourists and locals to their shops and eateries. Most successful tourist venues are well-lighted places like Las Vegas or Times Square. People at night are attracted to bright lights. They don't wish to be stumbling around in the dark in unfamiliar locations. By dimming and turning off lights, you are hurting the economic recovery of the county. Serious optical astronomy is not being done on the ground anymore, but now in outer space. The enormous success of the Hubble Space Telescope is now being replaced with the $6.5 billion James Webb Space Telescope. One reason for the space-based telescope is the growing amount of space debris. This year, the viewing of stars has started to change drastically. SpaceX's Starlink internet service now has a constellation of over 1,500 satellites. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk plans to eventually have more than 40,000 operational satellites. Two competitors are also planning to launch tens of thousands of internet satellites themselves. There is an additional incredible 500,000 pieces of space junk now being monitored. So the romantic idea of viewing the heavens from the Earth is already becoming a myth. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Most likely it won't be a star at all. Our world is drastically changing, and we cannot stop it. For thousands of years, man has survived with the warm glow of campfires. Later, lamps and lanterns lighted the nights. Then 142 years ago, Thomas Edison perfected the electric light bulb. Since then, our exploding population has demanded more and more light. Light to extend our days, light for safe travels, and light to fight crime. Many of the glare and outdoor lighting ideas that are being proposed here today, while idealistic, are misguided and threatening to our residents. I will highlight a few. The proposal requires the county to outlaw legally existing exterior lighting fixtures and have them replaced throughout the county. A 2-year grace period is being proposed before citations are issued. A major problem is that the proposal does not offer a grandfathering of the existing non-conforming light fixtures. The county probably has somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 non-conforming properties. As the current lighting fixtures are legally appurtenant to the structures and are a permanent part of the design and the ambience of the structures, the proposed ordinance represents a governmental taking of a portion of the structure. This makes the county liable for all of the replacement costs. Under the California State Constitution's taking clause, the county must first pay compensation before the taking, including payment for any collateral damages, such as impacts upon security camera systems. I estimate that my cost for an electrician to remove and replace my various fixtures on my acreage to be over $1,000. If you multiply that by 50 to 100,000 structures, that comes to $50 to $100 million that the county must first pay before retrofitting the county. If there is no grandfathering, the county will need to pony up. Remember, this ordinance has nothing to do about public safety, but it is for the perceived nighttime ambience of a special interest group. The desert residents are subject to high crime. The Sheriff's Department has limited resources and often has long response times. We need our existing security lighting to keep our families, our homes, and our communities safe. Under the state of California's Cal Green construction regulations, new structures are already mandated to prevent glare and light trespass. We don't need more confusing redundancy in the law. The proposed ordinance is highly discriminatory. The mountain and the desert regions are significantly impacted. The valley areas discriminately less, yet it is the urban areas that create the highest level of sky glow. The proposal further discriminates in that the overly lighted billboards are exempted. The so-called light trespass is a non-issue. Those who state that light trespass is a problem have failed to provide any evidence of any complaints made to either code enforcement or the Sheriff's Department that light trespass is a significant concern of the county's residents. Few residents are bothered by light trespass in the desert regions, as most desert homes are on a minimum 5-acre parcel. Light trespass is truly a non-issue to the vast majority of the desert's residents. Likewise, most lighting in the mountains is blocked by the forest or terrain. The discriminatory turnoff of security lighting after 11 p.m. for the mountains and desert region and the high restriction on light illumination to as little as 1/10 foot candle is unsafe for foot traffic and the handicapped. It will cause culpable liability to the county if property owners are forbidden to safely illuminate their properties. Some people may wish to live in the dark ages, but the reality is that communities do have drug problems, and drug addicts are roaming our rural neighborhoods 24/7 to rip off residential properties. Criminals do not stop at 11 p.m. 10 days ago in Newberry Springs, I had a crazed man climb over a 5-foot barbed wire fence and enter my property at 3:20 a.m. The wind was blowing hard and it was dark and cold. He tore his pants and he badly gashed his left leg on the barbed wire. It took approximately 25 minutes for 2 sheriff patrol units dispatched from the Barstow Sheriff Department to arrive. They couldn't find the man to help him. He apparently hid himself somewhere on my desert acreage. We need security lighting. Our rural communities are under a drug assault. If the Morongo Basin wants to restrict their lighting, let them address it in their local community plan. The remaining county should not be burdened with unnecessary and regressive regulations. This proposed ordinance is an enforcement nightmare. It will entail expensive experts to measure alleged illegal light trespass and to testify in court. There will be expensive costs in the calibration of photoelectric photometer instruments that must be regularly certified for judicial enforcement. For judicial enforcement, cell phone apps will not suffice. While we wish to support the military's training, the military's training areas are little impacted by sky glow. It is not a make or break issue for the military. What we need is focus on is the Planning Commission and the supervisor's role to represent the best interests of the county's residents. The Pentagon is capable of taking care of itself. The proposed ordinance will impact structures countywide. There is a clear lack of documentation that such a sweeping assault that infringes upon property rights is justified to hinder land use functionality. We further suggest that the illumination of flagpoles be exempted. With all the problems that this proposal represents, we don't understand why this unnecessary proposal is even being considered. The county already has Code Section 83.07 that addresses glare in outdoor lighting. The further tightening of the restrictions will only cause pain and problems for the residents and the county. As for wildlife and sky glow, wildlife is resilient, and the wildlife monthly adjusts to the many lighting phases of the moon. We suggest that this totally unnecessary and oppressive proposal be rejected and that the matter be addressed in local community plans. The proposed ordinance should be recognized as a problem that should be terminated. Thank you.
"14 minutes and 53 seconds. I'm impressed. Did you say flag poles? Did I hear something about flag poles?
Yeah, so there was earlier, and this was at the, I believe, the previous meeting, as far as restricting any lights that are upward beam that would be a contributor to sky glow.
You're defending flagpoles or eliminating, you're just bringing it to our attention. I didn't understand. It looked like it was tacked on and I was lost.
Yeah, I would like to see lights that might be beamed up to illuminate flagpoles be exempt.
All right, very good. Let's see if we got questions for you. Vice Chair Allard. You're muted. Still, almost.
I don't have any comments. Thank you very much.
We had to work to get there. Okay, Commissioner Huey.
No comments, Chairman.
Oh, no, I have a couple comments.
Okay, please.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting presentation, quite a difference from what we've seen earlier. I would like to know from staff, the population of the affected county residents in these areas, obviously keeping out any of the cities, the incorporated cities. I'd like to get just an idea of what the total population of our county residents in that area is. Also, well, I got a question on violations with code enforcement, but I'll do that later when we get to another call. Yeah, that's all.
All right, so somebody's going to start working on math a little bit. What we're doing is we're taking the total population of the county and subtracting off all the cities. Boom.
In the affected areas.
So really, we're the mountain and desert region.
Correct.
Incorporated, is that what you're asking?
Well, you've got county pockets that are going to apply also that are not in the mountain and desert region, if I understood the question. I guess what we're looking for is out of the 2.2 or 2.3 million people in San Bernardino County, how many people are going to be impacted by this if the county puts the ordinance together? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I think, isn't the valley residents exempt if they're in the county? This ordinance?
Let me start. So first point, 3,000 unincorporated. That includes the valley, unincorporated pockets. So 3,000 residents. Or sorry, 300,000 residents.
Wait.
So,
It was a test. If you were listening
know.
and you were
I went-
paying
I'm with you.
attention
So
to me. Thank you.
300,000.
300,000.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Tom, you had more to that?
so the 300, so that I'm clear, 300,000 residents in the county in the valley would be affected by this ordinance, correct?
That total county residents or valley?
Total unincorporated county residents, including valley.
So the valley would be a subset of that 300,000, probably smaller, but I don't know exactly what that number is.
And just unincorporated.
So on an unrelated issue, I pulled up some statistics about county housing. That's not necessarily updated, but in 2016, there was approximately 2 million residents in the county in total. So cities and unincorporated. So 85% of those residents lived in cities or towns that are incorporated. The remaining 14.6% are in unincorporated areas. And so 18.8% of the housing units in the unincorporated areas in 2016 was 111,000 approximately housing units. What percentage of that's in the valley compared to the mountains? I don't have statistics on that, but we could certainly bring that back.
I don't expect you have those numbers handy, but we can obviously get those in the next, whenever you can.
So one of the things we may take away, Magna, is when this comes back, if it survives that long, then some idea of what the impact is going to be in different areas might be helpful. Okay.
And also to clarify that, so there are valley region requirements, and then some of the more robust requirements are applicable to the mountain and desert region. But it's the ordinance in its entirety does have applicability across the county.
Okay.
But there is some regional type requirements. Hopefully that clarifies as well.
Anything else, Commissioner Huey?
Excuse me, Chairman, can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Yes, sir.
I'm really confusing myself here. This has nothing to do with the amount of light we're burning inside a unit, does it?
This
Heidi?
is strictly outside.
Outdoor.
Okay, so 99.9% of the time I got a front porch light and a back porch light. Is there someone I can call to see if they're extruding too many lumens, or I guess is that where I'm getting we're seeing different perspectives now, which is great. And I'm just wondering if you're accidentally using too much power, you don't even know it. Are there going to be, you got to go back and get the wrappers that your bulbs came in and start adding things up, or how does that work?
That information is on the packaging. So as far as coming into compliance, to be able to know what you're actually installing, if it's in compliance, from my understanding, is through the packaging.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gongora.
Yes, one of the, thank you for your presentation and for providing some additional background. One of the things that I had a question was more towards council about legality. I understand we have the ability to provide development code and place ordinances. Is there any substance to us being liable for those type of updates? I know there'll be county facilities that'll be impacted, but I actually don't know if there's any county facilities open past 11, but.
And government is, those are exemptions
Okay.
in ordinances.
Okay, that's good. And then the other elements is,
Hang on, stay on that though, because the discussion was about a taking, about a requirement of a taking and change. And so I had actually made a note of that in this taking clause. Is there,
Yeah, so
respond to that, please.
yeah, an amortization period is consistent with takings law. So if we have an appropriate amortization period where the individual can recoup their investment-backed expectation, then that has been found by courts to be consistent with a local government's police power. In this case, the county's proposing a 2-year period with a potential 1-year extension, which seems to be consistent with what other jurisdictions have done, or even greater. So that was taken into consideration when assessing the legality of proposing a regulation that would not allow a legal non-conforming use. So amortization period would be appropriate.
I think you're going to have trouble finding footing there, but
Yeah,
I understand.
myself, I have installed some fixtures that I would amortize out at 20 to 25 years. And to cut it down to 2 or 3 years, to me, that is a taking.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I stepped on top of you.
all good, thank
can
you. I
finish.
appreciate your comments. No, that was all I had, so
Okay.
thank you, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, very good. Commissioner Stoffel.
I think I just have a couple more questions for staff later.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I appreciate you coming down. We're going to then move to the public testimony portion of it. So do you have anybody here in chambers? And you had an email that I was going to forget. So let's circle back and get the email. Do we have anybody here in chambers? And where are we on our remote locations?
No speaker slips for here in person. Yes, we do have an email. And then we are at 7 speakers in Joshua Tree.
And Hesperia?
I have not received any. Heidi, can you confirm?
We
Okay.
will confirm, but we
So
had
let's
no
confirm.
speakers
So
at
we'll
this time.
We'll assume none. So nobody here in the chamber that hasn't already talked. I'm assuming you're code enforcement, right? Okay. Don't go away. Don't fall asleep. We're coming to you. Nobody here in chamber wants to talk about this. If so, you need to fill out a speaker slip and get it to Ms. Biggs. So let's do the email that you've got. Let's get that on record. And then if you could give me the list of the names. Email, and then we'll start on this. So we're gonna have her do the email. We're going to shift off to Joshua Tree and take them in order there, and then we'll see where we are.
Okay, this email comment comes from Stephen Farrell. He states, "It seems to me that max 400,000 lumens per string of lights should be based on area illuminated or used, not as an absolute limit. How, for instance, would one distinguish between a small patio with multiple string lights of 4,000 lumens wrapped around that small area and an expanded long string of lights following a long driveway? Lumens per area, question mark." He also continues, "A significant increase in light pollution and trespass within the mountain areas, both residential and commercial, has been the increased efficiency of LED bulbs, energy consumption, and lumens has resulted in a dramatic adoption of outdoor lighting. It is increasingly important to protect neighbors from this type of disturbance. As a simple example, I cast a dramatic shadow in my yard from my neighbor's all-night floodlights. I have little privacy and cannot enjoy the mountain environment of simple darkness at night. Thank you."
Very good. Interesting point, Ray. If you were trying to figure out what was on the wrapper, now you got to figure out the square footage underneath the light and what's on the wrapper, and then we'll get there. All right.
Exactly. Then we need to talk about drainage.
My friend. All right, we're going to shift to the remote location there. And I think when we do that, we lose our remote planning commissioner. So same thing. If there's a question that comes up or something that I'll try to keep an eye on the phone. So if we can make the shift to Joshua Tree, we're going to start with Lorraine Turk, and Paul Smith will be on deck. So we got a little technical light here. There we go. All right. Very good. Welcome, Lorraine. When you're ready, introduce yourself, and then you got 3 minutes, please. Hang on. Talk a little. I'm not hearing you. We got just 1 second. I don't think you have to do anything. I think it's us. All right, try now.
Hello, commissioners.
Very good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lorraine Turk from Joshua Tree, a resident of Joshua Tree, and I've been a part of all three of the groups that have been working on this issue since 2011, so a whole decade. It's been fun, and I've learned a lot. And I hope that today's presentation with that Steve and Luke did have really clarified things that we believe to be true in the value of this revised ordinance for health and safety and, of course, energy savings, and that's cost savings as well. I have to say that in the early days of our first group, and probably throughout, the issue of dark skies as a tourist attraction and as an interest of people who live in the mountain and desert areas, in the rural areas, for the purpose of being able to see the Milky Way all year long and to see the various stars and planets and even the meteor showers. So all of those aspects of the dark night sky have always been a part of this. But I have to say that I think myself and others who have worked on this over time have come to understand so much more, as was expressed in the presentation today, about the energy issues, climate change, and again, the security and safety and health. I think that's one that a lot of people weren't aware of, although we've started to hear about the blue lights of our devices that are harmful to us. And then finally, I'd like to take either credit or blame, and I say blame because if there are any errors in interpretation or fact, they are mine alone and not my fellow committee members. But on the 2-column comparison that you received as a handout, where I tried to go through both ordinances and clarify what was the same and what was different, some things were just moved to a different part of the ordinance. But I'd like to say that overall, I think that the two main things that it does are simplifying and modernizing the existing ordinance. And in way of simplifying, I'd point to, there's a chart or a table in there, it's table 83-7, and there are 14 different lighting bulbs and fixtures and situations that are listed with varying degrees of shielding required. That's in the current ordinance. If everything is shielded, everything needs to be shielded, you lose all that, detail that becomes difficult for code enforcement. As for modernizing, just the difference between measuring light trespass by a yardstick at the corner of a property on a dark night, moving to light meters and even phone apps that can measure light trespass is a very much of a modernizing thing. So I hope that we've convinced you on those three major issues of energy and cost savings, the safety and security, the health, and then certainly not to be overlooked, the tourism aspect, which of course the communities and the county benefit from. We hope that you will see fit to work this toward the supervisors with probably some adjustments, but we understand that. Thank you for your time and attention.
Very good. Thank you. Next up is Paul Smith, and Paul will be followed by Pat Flanagan.
Okay, good afternoon, and hello to the former the people that were commissioners when I used to sit on this board. I think it's great that you're doing this, and I just have a couple of points to hit. One is
Paul, for those
yes,
for those people that don't know you, could you introduce yourself? It's good to see you.
That's a good idea. Thank you. I'm Paul Smith, and I have an ownership interest in some tourism hotel type properties up in 29 Palms. And I've also served on this planning commission, as well as the planning department or the citizens advisory group for the Bureau of Land Management, which is about 1/5 of California. And I did that for 6 years.
Very good. Thank you.
One, I'd like to point out a wonderful thing about our desert here, and this is covered in the writing that I got. One, National Geographic, which is probably the foremost tourism magazine in the world, has designated the Mojave Desert, much of which is in San Bernardino County, as one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's in a subgroup within the 100 most beautiful places, which is about 25 places. So you can see that this desert that we have in our county, we're blessed to have one of the most beautiful places in the world, and one that's very popular. A signature. The National Geographic magazine chose as the signature photograph Joshua trees set against a glowing sunlight as the sun was going down. So we start off saying there's reason why this is such a great tourism place. It's that same beauty. Okay. In 2019, a visitor characteristics report was issued by the federal government with respect to Joshua Tree National Park. So, and there was a number of very sophisticated people studying it. This process has been going on for probably 10 years or more. Research in this report indicated that stargazing continues to increase in popularity, developing additional interpretive resources, activities, and programs, while increasing safety and reducing the potential impacts. There's a growing interest in the stargazing. In 2010, when I was involved in the prior edition of this report, stargazing was one of the top reasons why people came to Joshua Tree National Park, and it continues. Attached to the presentation that was included in your package is a photograph of the Milky Way over Hidden Valley in Joshua Tree, which of course is right near Joshua Tree, part of Joshua Tree National Park. It was taken by Wally Paholka. He's a 4 times Time Life magazine winner of the Picture of the Year Photographer Award. Almost unheard of. The beautiful pictures, and hopefully you get an idea of the reason why people come to see this night sky here that we have here in the desert. We experience that with the satisfaction of the visitors to the inns that we have, and we get a lot of comments on it. We also get comments of irritation at 2 different sources. One in particular of
That's time.
night lights that we're talking about here, from really bright lights. So we see the people's reaction to it, the tourists. So the tourism business is still strong, though, because the skies are so beautiful that they can look past those existing sources. But yes.
We're at time, my friend.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for doing this, and I would have to say that myself, as well as a number of people in our business, are very much in favor of this ordinance, or the change to it.
All right. After Paul is going to be Pat Flanagan, and after Pat, we've got Janelle Miller. So we'll do a little transition here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Pat Flanagan. I'm a resident of Desert Heights, a board member of the Morongo Basin Conservation Association, and I sit on the 3rd District Municipal Advisory Council, and I have been working on this ordinance for some time. Today I want to speak for myself as a biologist educator by training and occupation. I will address the purpose C of the proposed ordinance to promote wildlife habitation and migration by minimizing light trespass and pollution into and adjacent to habitat areas. This is supported by the proposed ordinance requirement G2 for the mountain and desert region, which states from any property onto a non-residential property, the maximum of allowable light trespass shall be 0.25 foot candles. All mammals, in fact, all animals and plants, live their lives by species-specific circadian rhythms that track light and dark according to complex nutritional and reproductive needs. Artificial light at night has been shown to disrupt the mating, migration, and hunting behaviors of many different species, and therefore the ecological system as a whole. Robust wildlife habitation and migration follow linkage connections that have been analyzed and mapped by South Coast Wildlands. Linkages include both live-in and pass-through habitat for a wide number of species. You have somewhere my presentation, which includes the linkage maps for California. And if you have it, please take a look. because it shows the linkage network for the California desert. The linkages extend from the transverse mountain ranges north and east across the basin and ranges. I live within the linkage network extending from the San Bernardino Mountains east through the Morongo Basin with north and south arms connecting Joshua Tree National Park with the Marine Base. Although there are impediments to migration, such as roads, the region is robust habitat because the 5-acre small tracts provide a patchwork of open space for passage and live-in areas. You also have a map of that. If you were to see it, you would note that my 5 acres is on the lower right side on Mesa Drive. My lights comply with the proposed ordinance. However, many houses within my view shine in bright, intrusive blue-white lights, 6,000 Kelvin, from dusk until dawn. I know some people are afraid of night-hunting predators such as coyotes or snakes, and some probably figured the brighter the better when they purchased their bulbs. However, night critters like human predators know how to hide in the dark. It's their job description. If they want to eat other critters, such as wood rats or prey animals, hide in the dark, sometimes under your car hood, and eat the soy-based wiring. Am I over?
You're right there.
Okay. Well, might I just suggest that there are other ways that we can deal. We do not need the bright lights. We can buy a new bulb, and you will not drive your neighbors nuts, and you will still be able to see.
Very good. Very good. Buy a new bulb. Janelle Miller is going to be next, and Janelle will be followed by Stephanie Ballard.
Hello, my name is Janelle Miller, and I live in the unincorporated area of Yucca Valley called Flamingo Heights. I was at a meeting earlier this week that Dawn Rowe, our county supervisor, attended, and she asked us to come in and let us know how important this the Dark Skies initiative is to us. And I'm talking about my neighbors and people that live up there in the other unincorporated areas. Thank you for having this workshop. It was very nice to hear about the health and safety issues and the energy and cost saving. They're really, it's good to know, but I'm here because of the dark skies, the byproduct of that. I also have neighbors who have a big floodlight, and because of their big floodlight, I can no longer see the Milky Way from my yard that I previously to that saw. And it's really important for us for this dark skies, because I have friends coming out here from Virginia next month, and they're expressly coming here to see the dark skies. I guess that's all I have to say, and I thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you. All right, next up is going to be Stephanie Ballard and then Laura Emmerich. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ballard. I live in Joshua Tree. I'm a fairly new resident, having just moved here a few years ago. And you can imagine my amazement when, for the first time in my long life, I looked up and I saw the Milky Way that I had only heard about. So that was special. And I also have a friend coming from back east who wants to also see the Milky Way, my friend from Kentucky. So I hope that it's still visible. So I wanted to thank you for this workshop. It was very informative. I guess I'm here for another personal reason, is that when I moved to Joshua Tree living on a dirt road, and I absolutely love it. However, there's always that one neighbor who kind of ruins things, and we do have one residence on the road, quite large, with the entire property fenced in. And the fence is rimmed by those very large string lights. So I'm Also, looking in the neighborhood of Joshua Tree with all the short-term rentals, string lights have become very popular. I think that could be a kind of a tough issue to deal with. I do have one concern about the proposed ordinance, and that is with enforcement. It seems rather weak to me, and I guess I would prefer to see the enforcement aspect strengthened. The 2-year grace period for compliance seems overly generous. The other communities that you compared it to range from 3 months to a year for compliance, and I guess I would rather see something closer to a year grace period. The other enforcement issue is that
Stephanie,
yes?
I think we're there at your 3 minutes.
Okay, all righty, thanks.
All right, thank you. So Laura is coming up next, and then Chrissy. While we're transitioning, I just want to put on the record that Susie Boyd was there, but had to leave, but was in support, as was David Fick, who is there and in support. All right, Laura, welcome. When you're ready, you got 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm here because I'm very much bothered by my neighbor's blaster lights. I live in the Yucca Mesa area of the unincorporated part of the San Bernardino County, and I'd like to help explain what the issue is. When you have two hilltops, your house is at the same level of elevation as your neighbor. Your neighbor's blaster light goes everywhere, from here to here, up in the sky, on their own property. This is what it looks like when it's on their own property. But when their house is at the same altitude as yours, it goes right inside your house windows, across the valley, inside your house windows, inside your bedroom, and I don't like having my neighbor's lights inside of my house. We have ordinances about fencing and dogs and light and sound, so let's keep the neighborhood perimeters safe. If my property boundary, I don't want my neighbor's fence on my property, I don't want my neighbor's dog on my property, I don't want their pop-up rave music after 10 p.m. on my property, and I don't want their light inside of my bedroom light all night long. You know, the light travels across the universe, and we have technology for measuring it. We have light meters, we have ways of talking about it. And we need to incorporate modern technology and scientific ways of talking about light to keep my neighbor's light on his property and not inside of my house. I would like to point out that sometime in the 80s or the 90s, all of San Diego County changed their night lighting on their streets so that the Palomar Observatory could have better results. So it's absolutely within the perimeter of the county to say, let's handle lighting a certain way because my neighbor's things need to stay on my neighbor's property. My neighbor's light should not be coming inside of my house all night long. And so I just want to point out that mankind's progress is something that we can talk about and measure and be scientific and respectful towards each other in our neighborhoods. And that's why I'm absolutely in favor of repealing and replacing 83.7. Repeal and replace so that we have a way to prevent light trespass because it is a problem. I have several neighbors who feel they need to live in a used car lot. And I think that's completely inappropriate for neighborhoods. And as far as mankind's progress, let's keep in mind that in the 1300s, the forest in Europe was cut down because each person who needed to build their house didn't realize that 700 years later, the forest would not return. Thank you very much.
Hang on. Before you go away, come back. 2 questions. One, I want you to hang on after you're done because we're going to have code enforcement here, and I want to ask some questions that will relay to your story, and I may need you for that. Secondly, have you talked to the neighbor on the other hilltop that's at the same level that you're at and said, you know, your light is in my house?
I would get in my car and drive all the way over there on dirt roads, and if they aren't answering, they don't come out of their house. And I don't want to be the lady that's on the street saying, would you turn your lights off?
Okay. I just wanted to see if we've tried to handle this the most expedient way, which in some cases works, and in others doesn't. It doesn't
You
solve
don't
the
know
problem.
my neighbors. My neighbors have their house, and
Okay.
I have mine.
So Laura,
So we need good ordinances
No.
so that we all play nice in the neighborhood, so the sheriffs don't need to come out.
Laura,
That's what good ordinances are for.
Laura, I'm all in favor of good neighbors and good fences. So we think the same way, but if you think talking to your neighbor is difficult at this point, calling code enforcement on them is not going to help the relationships within the neighborhood. And so I'm merely asking if some of these things can be solved when we talk to our neighbors and explain our concerns, as opposed to we're going to build a rule so that we can sick somebody else on them as part of it. Because that's probably, if they're not paying attention to your concerns at this point, I'm not sure how compliant they're going to be with code enforcement when we get there. And so I would just wanted to explore that just a little bit.
My neighbors also have 20,000 rounds of ammo in their house. So, yeah, let's put good ordinances in place. Thank you.
Wow.
It made the news. I'm not making it
I
up.
don't even know where to go with that. Chrissy Stewart, are you there, Chrissy? Help rescue me. Get me out. Hi. Chrissy, introduce yourself.
Hi.
You got 3 minutes.
All right. Hi, I'm Chrissy Stewart, and I'm a member of the 3rd District Dark Sky Committee here in town, as well as an active volunteer at Sky's the Limit Observatory in 29 Palms. I'd just like to read a brief statement today on behalf of the President, Ann Congdon, and the Board of Directors for Sky's the Limit Observatory. Sky's the Limit Observatory and Nature Center Board and volunteers have witnessed firsthand the impact of a dark night sky on the thousands of visitors from across the country and around the world who are awed by their first encounter with the desert sky. Sky's the Limit is committed to supporting Joshua Tree National Park as a dark sky park and applauds all efforts to protect the night sky as a critical natural resource. We encourage our gateway communities to enact and enforce effective dark sky ordinances. I'd also just like to make a brief comment on the issue of safety as it pertains to bright lighting. As we saw earlier in the presentation, there's a common misconception that brighter is better and safer, but as we've seen today from the data in Steve Bardwell and Luke Sabata's presentation, this is untrue. Brighter does not mean safer. Obviously, my safety is of utmost importance to me, and I can say with confidence that lighting up the nighttime environment does not necessarily improve safety or security. This may seem contradictory, but there's actually no clear scientific evidence that increased outdoor lighting deters crime and increases safety. Additionally, the blinding glare and shadows cast creates difficulty in vision and perception at night, as we observed earlier in the demonstration. When the lights are low, it's easier to see. Bright lighting actually makes it less safe. I hope you'll take this important measure of safety into consideration for everyone in our community here. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other speakers there? That's the end of my agenda. And did we find anyone in Hesperia?
No speakers in Hesperia.
Okay. Very good. Ms. Biggs?
No additional speakers.
Excellent. All right. Code enforcement, come see us. Good afternoon. So, what's your opinion about this as far as the enforceability? You've heard us talk about whether Commissioner Allard is going to be on his doorstep doing math, trying to figure out where the wrapper was from the light bulb, and you've heard discussion about lumens per area, and you've heard discussions about neighbors who are unhappy with neighbors, and so those are the calls you're going to get. tell me where you stand on this. And then I want to go back to the neighbors versus neighbors, because it sounded to me like Laura's complaint about her neighbor might fall under the current code as it stands as excessive without this dialing up. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Can you help us out? Introduce yourself. I haven't met you.
Sure. My name is Ignacio Nunez. I'm a code enforcement supervisor.
Ignacio,
and I'm
welcome.
currently serving as the interim code deputy chief.
So move the microphone just a little bit.
Is that good right there?
Yeah, you're gonna have to just use your outside voice, my friend.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
As to your question, as to my opinion on the new ordinance, certainly this new ordinance, I believe, more clearly defines and makes it easier for us to do our job. The old ordinance, we saw the table that's there with all the different light bulbs and all the different things that we would need to look at when we're out at the property. And that sometimes makes it difficult for us using the yardstick test and doing all that. So I in my opinion, this new ordinance more clearly defines, some solutions to the issue. What were some of your other questions? I'm sorry, there were 3 or 4 in there, right?
So how are we going to do this? You get, I'm going to pick on Laura for a minute. Laura calls and she says, my neighbor is violating the code. What's the process that happens at that point in time? If she can't get them to come out to the gate, how are you going to do that? Do you have code enforcement that's running at night? What's that?
Well,
How do you verify that it's a legitimate claim, and then how will you go through enforcing?
Well, I think we mentioned earlier that we work on a complaint basis, right? So we'll receive the complaint, and then what we do is we prioritize our responses depending on the most severe issues. So we would get this complaint, we'd prioritize it. If it's a health and safety issue, maybe it's next to a street where the light is blinding motorists, then that would go right up, to the top, and we'd go out and take a look at it. We take a look at all other complaints also, and from my experience, we go and talk to the neighbor. We try and gain compliance voluntarily, right? We look at the light, we'll look at the code and see if it's, complies with the code, and if it doesn't, then we give the neighbor some time to comply. If they decide not to comply, we'll send a notice of violation. We'll follow up, allowing them some more time with the notice of violation, and then following up with a citation if they decide not to comply. From my experience, many of these light complaints are solved with just some dialogue from the officer and pointing out, maybe we can shield the light, we can do some work to reduce the glare, and the majority of the complaints are solved in that way.
Okay. And you have code enforcement officers available 24 hours a day? You have a night shift? How does that?
Well, we don't. We have code enforcement officers available 7 days a week. We don't have a night shift, but we do go out and verify complaints at night when we need to.
Okay.
So for a complaint that we would receive, we go out during the day, we look at the light fixture, and we could clearly tell that it's an issue. We can resolve that usually during the day.
Okay.
But if we can't, then we'll go out at night.
Right. So the proposed ordinance as it stands, in your opinion, is not a prescription for either an overburden of work or unmanageable work in code enforcement.
Well, we receive light complaints on a regular basis, but I wouldn't say they're in our top 10 violations out in that part of the desert.
So what is that wait?
What's the wait for a normal complaint that would come in?
It's a neighbor to neighbor. There's not a health and safety issue. There's not a sense of urgency. It's just an annoyance, and it probably is a violation. Right. That would be dealt with in how long?
We normally go out there within 2 weeks from receiving the complaint to try and verify if the
even for lower priority complaints, you're within 2 weeks.
That's our goal, yes, sir.
Okay, and do you respond to the complainant? So back to Laura. Laura calls and says Neighbor Hill is a problem. You go talk to Neighbor Hill, and either they say, yes, we'll do something about it, or no, we won't, or you decide that it's not an issue. At that point, then, do you respond back to Laura and say, we've looked at the complaint, they're going to change it, or?
We usually have complainants follow up. Some of the complaints are provided anonymously, right? So we don't know who placed it. But let's say they do leave their information. They usually will follow up with us.
Okay.
And we
All right.
don't necessarily
You don't
call
have to
everyone
circle
back
back.
and
They'll
say.
they'll call you. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Hold on one second. We're going to poll the group and see if there are questions here. And I think this is really open to any staff. Actually, I think I'm not going to do that. Just hang on a second. Steve, I had promised you a few minutes, a couple minutes of rebuttal. Are there things that you want to respond to? I'm not looking to necessarily just reinforce points, but if there are things that you think were either that need to be straightened out, I want to give you that opportunity. So Ignacio, just hang on. Don't wander too far, because we may have questions for you. But I want to get Steve's done, and then we're sort of finished with testimony. We can go to the planning commissioners.
Great, thanks so much. I do appreciate this. First of all, it's a question of there's been a lot of talk about enforcement and code enforcement. We don't want to talk about code enforcement. What we want to talk about is we don't want to get to code enforcement. We want to get to educating and informing people and to be aware of the problems of light trespass. I think that it should be the prime approach that I think should be taken, is let's make a public effort to expose this problem so that people can be aware of it, so that we don't go. We don't want to. We love code enforcement. We don't want to see the code enforcement. Sure. So I think that is really very important. Something to also, there is no lumens per area. There's no discussion about, in terms of Commissioner Allard talking about that. That is not part of this ordinance. This ordinance specifically does not talk about how many lumens can be placed on a particular property. Now, different from this ordinance that was passed in West Texas recently, which has a maximum number of lumens per acre that are allowed. That is not the case here. In our case, we have 4,000 lumens of string lights that can be applied wherever you want on your particular piece of property. In terms of response to, with the passage of this ordinance, I believe this would then provide an opportunity when people, at the time, be good publicity that this ordinance is being passed. Then if someone calls and says, hey, this guy has an uncomplying light, well, then the county should have and be prepared to have a canned letter that talks about all the issues of light trespass, about what needs to be done, with a very clear description of what's happening with the time limit that's coming along the way. So I think that's very important. Also, I'd like to correct, and thanks very much for the clarification about the number of households. You know, this county, a big county. It is 640,000 households in the entire county, but I very much appreciate that it's 110,000 within the unincorporated area. So it's only $1 million+ that's going to be saved. But
that's fair.
Thanks very much.
Okay, for the record, this is a workshop, so there's conversation that's being had. This, I assume, will come back to the Planning Commission, and we'll take public testimony again. So if you don't have the last word, don't worry, there'll be another opportunity as part of it, and certainly you can submit additional information to staff that will be incorporated as part of the process. So I'm going to go through and poll planning commissioners at this point. You would know that it was the engineer in the group that said, what about lumens per square foot? Because it had to go to a slide rule somewhere. Commissioner Allard, questions, comments? What did we learn?
Comments, I'm seeing a couple of things. One, I would agree this is probably about long-term education and changing the way we do things. And when's the last time you were able to buy a toilet that can give you a good 5-gallon flush? They're all low-flow fixtures now in all the new houses. And plus the stuff, so we've just gradually went over there to saving an awful lot of water on 2-gallon flushes. So there's going to be a lot of that. There will be, and there is tonight there's going to be 20 complaints about light coming into code from neighbors' properties. So that it's a real thing that we have to deal with enforcement. And then a lot of folks are bringing up real good points about wildlife and wildlife migration in the face of tremendous amount of nighttime glare that might keep deer or whatever away from areas that they normally wash as they walk up and down and things like that. So that's also part of it. I don't know if code gets a lot of phone calls about wildlife migration, but it's something that a few people have brought up, and we need to pay attention to that somehow too. Don't have any answers, but you're right, it is a workshop, so those are my 3 concerns.
Very good. Very good. Commissioner Howie? Questions
Yeah,
or
thank you.
thoughts for staff?
But I have to comment about you're trying to get a code enforcement officer to give you a date on how soon they're going to be able to respond. That's a good one, because who knows who's on vacation, who's not feeling well. I mean, there's a myriad of different things that,
Scenarios.
I only live a block from the county area, and I know code enforcement has a heck of a time trying to see we don't have enough code enforcement officers in the county to go around and try to take care of all the laws and rules that we have. But no, I think it's been an interesting conversation. I'll say at this point, I would recommend us sending this obviously back to us again, as opposed to letting it just go away. And,
Okay.
and obviously the supervisors are going to have to make the final determination on
Exactly.
where this thing goes from here. I mean, we can look at it and we can say, yeah, we think it's a good idea, but we're not the final decision makers at all in this process. That's all I have to say.
Very good. Very good. Commissioner Stoffel. Next.
Fire pits aren't part of this, right? Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Not unless they're electric.
I just, it just popped in my head, so.
Would you like them to be?
No. There was some talk about government being exempt from some of this stuff. I already see a finger being pushed over here to talk. I would just personally like to see that the county buildings, at least, in the areas like the mountains or the desert where it's dark, are compliant.
And I should clarify that the ordinance, the exemption is for land owned, operated, or controlled by the United States government or state of California.
Okay.
That's where that exemption is. So
The
it didn't mean to
county is not
cause-
exempt.
That is not in the exemptions.
Okay.
So I didn't mean to create confusion on that, but
No, that's just making
thank
sure.
you for asking.
Yeah, and then I like government to follow rules. I think my enforcement questions somewhat got answered. I still don't see how it's going to happen 100%, but
I don't think any of this is for certain. I think we're trying to hit the flat spot or the fat spot of the bat as best we can to say, look, this applies. There will be people that code enforcement is going to have to wrestle clear to the ground, and other people that go, oh, I didn't understand. And
I think it's important to emphasize too, and Ignacio brought up a very good point in terms of, yes, we can suspect this may increase the complaints or increase some of the reasons for people to call code enforcement, but there is at least some clarification and better, I think, language in there that makes it more easily enforceable from their perspective in terms of what the calls they're getting in now, they're responding to, but it's a little bit unclear as to where the violation lies and how to measure and how to do these things. And there's some clarification there. So whether the new ordinance increases complaints, I think that remains to be seen, and they'll just have to continue to address those as they do within the workload, just as they do with the current ordinance.
I also agree that the education is a big thing. And so I think it was brought up, but I'm not sure it was clear on how it's going to be done. But how are we going to notice property owners who aren't living there full time and short-term rentals and long-term rentals?
We had thought about creating a letter providing that information, hopefully with a graph similar to the one that we saw from the city of 29 Palms, showing the correct light fixtures, shielded and positioned correctly.
And that goes to mailing addresses, property owners, it goes to...
Currently, the way that we do notification is through assessor records, which would be property owners. And then obviously, our website and other mediums are able to be used in that regard. But as far as direct mail notification is based on assessor records.
The county seems to recently be doing, well, maybe not recently, maybe longer, a good job on social media. And so it'll also be like a social media posts and...
Yes, we are definitely utilizing our social media platforms to communicate with our communities a lot more than we have in the past.
You good? Commissioner?
Yes. So timeline. Today was our workshop. We took a lot of public comment, a lot of inquiry. What are we looking at moving forward?
That is a very good question, and I think some of it is going to depend on the direction we get from the commissioners in terms of the ordinance we have, how close we are, how much more work needs to be done. We have some of our calendars booked up, so our agenda is getting a little bit tight. But if there's minimal work, it could be, within 2 months. Yeah, I was going to say probably about 2 months. I think we did in the notification for this workshop have given people a little bit additional time, understanding. I kind of want to just take it aside. The presentations were very helpful to me as well. There was a lot of great information, and hearing both sides was very important. And I think from this, has been a tremendous amount of education. If anybody who has been, participating from home or watching the meeting, there may be some comments and some feedback based on the amount of information that was presented today. So we've given some time to have some more comments in, to feed into the work we're going to do. So I would say a 2-month time frame would be reasonable.
So this doesn't feel like a complete rewrite. You're doing some polishing. And if we can look at the agendas over the next couple months and sort of target where we want to go, get it on the advanced schedule, or if you've got a cancellation that comes up and can move it in, let's try to work it. So we get two things, the practical part of it, but then also where it's going to fit in the workload, but probably in the next 2 months?
Yeah, I just want to make sure there is a timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
No worries.
And I want to also bring up just very quickly, because as we are talking about, the polishing and the direction, we were kind of looking based on Commissioner Howie's comments as far as the applicability. And I think to his point was really caught us that it is a little bit confusing as far as the language on the applicability relative to, you have your 83.07.040, which is on page 16 of the report you have, has applicability. That's all it states. And then it goes into valley region requirements and then desert and mountain region requirements. And those, the comments you were talking about as well with the string lights and things, those, it's not clear where the applicability is. And so we'd be happy to get direction from the PC. And it's very, it's definitely different than the previous or the existing ordinance as far as, not really having a lot of restrictions on those valley regions.
Awesome. Are we in the position to make recommendations, or Mr. Chair?
So I think we're not making recommendations or decisions, but to be able to give staff direction or say, I'd like to learn more about this, or I'm concerned about that, or if we could have a better definition of how it's applied to the different regions or how it might be customized to different regions, those are things that are reasonable to put out to say, let's see what that might look like in a draft and so on. Remember, this will come back as a proposed ordinance. At that point in time, We have the ability to say, yeah, we like it and send it on. We have the ability to say, no, we don't like it and go tinker. We have the ability to say, we'd like you to go fix this particular area. So this is not a one and done as much as it is sort of a funneling and narrowing, if it's brief.
Thank you. Towards that end, I'd like to suggest that if possible to have a video of this available online, similar to what is the way the Board of Supervisors hearings are conducted.
I'm not sure we rate such high-tech stuff, but I'm pretty sure
We
there's
actually, and thank you for bringing that up, because I think that discussions come up, and we have been working with the clerk of the board to help us facilitate getting that on our website, similar to what the board does. So I will be following up with that in direct response to your request.
Okay. All right. So I think we're sort of there with this. Any other comments?
I would just like to see other jurisdictions, counties, what their, what is it called, Jason? Amortization period?
Amortization period.
Amortization. Thank you. And see.
I thought that was on our chart.
Was it on one of the slides?
No, it was one of the handouts.
It's on the comparison table, on the
okay.
memo that we provided.
Yes, we can do it. It may be so easy as finding it, but it seemed to me that the one, I can't find it. Sorry.
It would be on page 4, which I don't think there's an actual number, but page 4 of the staff report. On that chart, under the non-conforming lighting line on the table, talks about when the compliance has to be done with the ordinance.
Yeah, but that's not, so that's compliance in the ordinance, but I believe that Commissioner Gongora is asking for comparisons with what other jurisdictions have done. And I saw something in here that one was 10 days and one was 6 months and we're 2 years.
Yeah, that's attached to the memo that we provided. It's yeah, in the comparison table.
And I guess my concern is if you do 2 years with an extension, we're 3 years out from implementation, hypothetically speaking. So I would be, just looking if we could reduce that or see what we could do as an agency and what is legal.
Okay, so let's be prepared to answer questions about that. And then, Jason, that's going to involve you about the practicality of too short and too long.
Yeah, and a lot of that is kind of hard to say. It is a lot of a case-by-case basis, and it's probably based normally on the typical normal fixture and how many lights each housing unit would typically have. I know Malibu, which I think this proposed ordinance was somewhat drafted off of, used the similar, either a 1 year or a 2 year period, but we can definitely look at comparisons and provide you that information.
Thank you. That's all. Appreciate it.
Okay. So I'm going to close this down. It's not on our agenda. Do we need to open for public comment outside of this? I don't think we have any, but.
No, we noticed this in their special meeting rules, and so there's no public comment.
Okay, very good. All right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
So staff then, this is a workshop, and did you mention that you've got enough information and direction and input to bring back a draft ordinance for our consideration in a couple of months, or do we just go into another workshop, or do you need anything specific from us to take it from here?
That's a staff question.
I think our intention is to kind of summarize some of your feedback, and I think there may be some, a few things that maybe we'd like for you to give us clear direction, if there's some preference on. But our intent would be to come back with a draft ordinance based on our conversation and with a recommendation, not another workshop.
Okay, so if we, sorry, go ahead.
The draft ordinance would be a modification to our existing one, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I love the way you present those to us, where we can see what we have going on now. We heard a lot of input here. I'm particularly concerned that we figure out a way to, to protect the wildlife, the good swift code, and to let Commissioner Gongoria enjoy his backyard past 11 o'clock at night when most of us are in bed. So yeah, I think you've heard enough, and those are my comments, sir. I look forward to whatever you want to bring forward.
So, sir, when we make the decision that they've heard enough, that also means we've said enough. All right. So we'll look for this to come back. If there are questions, I don't have a problem putting it on the bottom of another agenda and just saying, look, we got 8 questions. We're going to notice it. We're going to ask those questions so that we get some specific directions. So it's not open testimony and so on, but on the record, we're available to answer some of the fine stuff. I think that you've got enough to actually buff what you have and bring it back, but I'm not the one that has to write it, so it's easy for me to say.
Yeah, I think we do. I would just like more your suggestions regarding the string lights and landscaping.
So how do we do that? I mean, is that a question? I'm assuming that as long as we're not all working as a group, we're okay. So if staff has 3 or 4 questions specific to what are your feeling about string lights, here are our choices, and that went out in a letter and to each of the planning commissioners and came back to you as opposed to a group decision, that we could provide feedback offline that way.
Okay.
If there are a couple of things that you're curious about, so that we would sort of be polled, but not as a group, and don't reply to everyone. These should be individual emails to each of us so that it's not a group decision.
Okay.
But maybe that would be a way that you could begin to get some thinking about specifics, and then when it comes back, you've got sort of a consensus. Am I okay with that?
Yeah, we, staff could definitely reach out individually and contact commissioners outside of this public hearing. I think what maybe Magda was just requesting, if there's any specific direction that the commission had currently, feel free to offer it. Otherwise,
Okay.
we don't want to come back at the next meeting and maybe have deleted the landscape limitation, and for some reason you guys like the landscape limitation. But if that's something that you have current direction on, that's fine. Otherwise, outside of the meeting.
I feel like the discussion kind of went with, there's the provision of string lights are not used as landscape lights. And then the next section goes on to talk about string lights must be extinguished by 11 p.m. And that seemed like there was perhaps some thought to allow the string lights in the landscaping, provided that they were extinguished by 11 p.m. as well. And it seemed like the group was thinking that was a fair consideration.
So my thoughts on that were, as long as the string lights fell into the proper type of light that we want, and they were extinguished by 11 or when you're done chilling, that it's fine. But the way that it read to me was that it's not prohibited, or it's not permitted if it has anything to do with landscaping. And I think the chairman made a good point that what does it matter if it's wrapped around a pole of your patio cover or if it's on a palm tree?
So maybe the answer is we take a look at string lights and talk more about total lumen and color and 11 o'clock, as opposed to it's okay if it's on a patio cover and it's not okay if it's on a tree, and then a flagpole is even more confusing.
Another idea for the commission is the location of this in the ordinance may be the confusing part as well. Currently, it doesn't sound like it was intended that there'd be any curfew for lighting in the valley area, but with a curfew in the location where it's at, it makes it seem like it applies to the valley and that there's some curfew, and I don't know if that was intended. If it was just intended for the mountain and desert region, then it probably would make better sense that that's located in that section, so it's not being confused as a limitation in the valley area. So little tweak.
If it's more mood lighting or access lighting for people, I'm fine with the curfew being everywhere. Okay. All right, I think we've run out of gas. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to to adjourn this
So moved.
workshop. I have a
Eh,
motion.
I'm sorry,
hang on,
I do want to make one last comment because we did get an email and I think this is important to include as our conclusion. So as stated on our agenda, written comments will be accepted until 5 p.m. on Friday, June 18th, 2021, and they can be submitted to the Planning Commission Secretary via email at planningcommissioncomments@lus.sbcounty.gov, and that website link is available on today's agenda.
Okay, so we're still taking comments, and again, this is going to come back for another bite at the apple when it comes to us, and then it'll be a recommendation, and then you can show up at the Board of Supervisors. So there's, you're gonna get frequent flyer miles. There's lots of opportunities. Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
I'm looking for multiple seconds. We have the seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Gentlemen, thank you for making your afternoon available. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.